Today we're going to talk about the Dark Aether storyline and its future not only in Cold War Zombies and DLC 4, but also into Vanguard Zombies because, as I'm sure you guys know by now, the Dark Aether story continues there. And we're going to be going over a lot of pretty interesting things. One is having to do with the Forsaken and his continued attempts at entering into this universe. And then also we'll learn about the extent of the Endstation group, a group that surprisingly we know very little of, and we have to keep finding little bits and pieces here and there, trying to figure out what exactly they did and what exactly was the extent of their work. And then finally we'll touch on, and this one's a big one, the possible location of a map in Vanguard Zombies, which is really exciting to think about. But of course, those are some pretty big things, so where the heck am I getting this new information from? Well, it's actually from some intel. And unfortunately, this intel is only accessible to PlayStation players because you only get it if you play Onslaught, and more specifically, the Echelon Onslaught map. And here you'll get 3 pieces of intel, and these are interesting to say the very least. Now what I want to do for you guys is actually read this first one in its entirety, for we could then go over it from there. The Devil's Mountain, 4R Weston, Office of Central Intelligence. From NSA Analyst E. Jaworski, Field Station Berlin. Subject, read-in clearance request for Berlin event. Sir, I am formally requesting assistance for a developing situation here at our Echelon listening station on Tusfelbergs, aka The Hill. In the last several days, our team has been picking up a strange transmission from beneath the station. At first, we believed it was just a poorly redirected signal from another point of origin. After all, we do utilize the Ferris wheel as a signal amplifier, so we had issues before. As we traced the signal, though, we discovered it originated from below the sub-basement of our own facility. It is coming from underground. While these transmissions are infrequent, we have identified a pattern. We have received exactly 10 messages since last Wednesday, occurring at roughly 12-hour intervals. As initial listen, the messages are garbled nonsense. Our own instruments provided unable to decrypt anything intelligible. However, each message is the same length, with vocal pitches occurring at the exact same interval in each message. It is gibberish, but it's intentional gibberish. Someone is transmitting a repeating code. I should point out that the hill is not at natural elevation, but a man-made hill. Teufelberg, meaning Devil's Mountain, is actually tons of rubble from the war piled up upon an unfinished Nazi military facility. According to our files, it was a simple matter of cost. It was cheaper to simply bury than demolish it. It is from this buried Nazi structure that our strange transmissions are broadcasting. I should make it clear that I am not superstitious, but I heard rumors of a classified incident occurring in a certain Berlin checkpoint earlier last month. In fact, we intercepted 2 communication requests assisted in combating an otherworldly supernatural threat. These messages are curiously went unanswered by Central. One mentioned an office of Requiem. I did some digging and I found it to be an office operating under DS&T. However, I lacked necessary clearance to even identify who is running the office, let alone its purpose. Last month, an unnatural event at the checkpoint. This month, an unnatural signal beneath our feet. I do not believe in coincidences. There is a connection between these events. Therefore, I hereby request a read-in clearance to all files pertaining to the Berlin incidents. If this request is denied and the transmission persists, we will be left no choice but to begin evacuating. We must find what's going on down there, one way or their other. So I'm sure you guys are able to tell why this document is so significant, but let's first start off with the first thing that is mentioned of interest in this document, and that is, of course, this seemingly signal that's coming from a place, at least initially, unknown. This thing that this NSA analyst is not able to figure out what the heck its origins is, or more importantly, what it's even trying to relate to him. All he knows is that it is a signal that needs to be decrypted, but he is unable to do so because every time he tries to, it just comes out as gibberish. But more importantly is where he tries to figure out exactly where this signal is coming from. And at first he thought it was a mistake, but then after further looking into it, he confirms that this signal is coming from beneath the Echelon facility. And that's where it gets interesting, because what he says is that this Echelon facility was built up on Devil's Mountain, which is an artificial mountain and was only built this way because an old Nazi military facility was buried under it. And what's interesting is that this is actually completely related to real life. Like, all of this happened. The Echelon facility is an NSA spying location where they do some spying stuff on the Soviets during Cold War, but more importantly is that Nazi military facility that is buried under there. Because the real life story of this is that this was a Nazi military, not facility, but college. It was supposed to have some, some university stuff going on here, but it was never finished being built, at least in real life. And of course, when the Nazis lost the war and the Allies came in, they kind of wanted to get rid of all the Nazi stuff, and they initially tried to destroy this Nazi university, but that proved to be quite difficult. So what they tried to do instead was bury it, and they actually realized that they had a lot of rubble left over from all the destroyed things that were destroyed during the war. So they used that debris to actually bury the Nazi facility, and then later on they built this NSA spying place, which is very interesting and a nice piece of real life lore. But it is something that we will at least come back to after a while. But for now, I want to continue reading through these documents. Now, we're not going to read this next one in its entirety because the first part is easy to summarize. I'll summarize that, and then we'll read the last part of it because that is actually quite interesting. But for a summary of at least the first part of this next document, this is what happens to Jaworski during the outbreak, because as we know on Onslaught maps, these are mini outbreak locations, and it kind of tells us what happens, how everybody gets infected, and they're trying to fight off the undead, and he kind of assumes that he's not going to make it out of here. But we'll now read the last part of this document because it is quite interesting. One additional detail I'm convinced is connected. Last week we began receiving a strange, indecipherable transmission from the Nazi facility buried beneath the hill. I can confirm it is a repeating verbal cipher of some sort. We were unable to decode it. However, if you are who I think you are, you may have better luck. Requiem, by the time you find me, I'll either be dead or silenced at your hands. Do me a favor. There's an Angela Jaworski in Stokey, Illinois. At least let her know I'm KIA. I don't care about the cover story, provided it's not embarrassing. She deserves to not be left in the dark, so she can at least move on with her life. And if this isn't Requiem reading this was all an elaborate prank. Haha, got you good, didn't I? So this one is continuing to push the previous things that were said in the previous radio, of course talking about this Nazi facility buried below, and then on top of that, the signal that they are unable to decrypt is still coming from there, but he is trying to at least leave this information out for Requiem if he doesn't survive, for they could then maybe try to use this information for something useful. But the last thing he mentions is the mention of his wife, Angela Jaworski, who is actually from Stokey, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, Illinois, which is interesting that that is mentioned because of things that are in this next document. And to really get a good idea of why this is important, let's actually read that next document also in its entirety. Echelon Breach Report. Memorandum for Gregory Weaver from Heineck Mayer. Subject Teufelsberg Incident Report. Sir, I wanted to inform you that the outbreak at Field Station Berlin on Teufelsberg has been quelled as of 1300 this afternoon. As you predicted once again, the team was assisted by an ethereal orb, which provided a safe passage through the phase-filled outbreak zone. A confused ally it may be, but an ally nonetheless. We believe the Berlin incident weakened the dimensional membrane at the Nazi military facility buried beneath the hill. Perhaps the place bore some significance to the undead Nazi army. This began on Wednesday, March 6th, when the NSA analyst Jaworski first received the transmission from the dark ether. It wasn't until Monday when the barrier collapsed and dimensional breach occurred. Per your request, Jaworski is en route to Lanley as I write this. As I said in our call earlier, Jaworski proved invaluable in both fighting the Horde and securing the facility. This incident would not have been resolved so quickly if it wasn't for him. Apparently, he caused a real stir with his clearance request, and Weston asked for his removal. I'm glad the director saw the benefit in keeping Jaworski around. Containment and security will be lucky to have him. Finally, we have successfully decoded the transmission first discovered by NSA analyst Jaworski. The message is somewhat alarming. Eric, are you there? It's me, Angela. I need your help. I've been taken by something. I don't know where I am. It is so dark. I'm so cold. You have to get me out of here. You have to free me from this place. Please, I'm scared. Don't let me die here. I can help you find me. I will show you how. Please don't leave me alone. Given that this dark ether message is addressed to Jaworski and appears to be written by his wife, there is only one conclusion. This transmission is from the entity known as the Forsaken, an attempt to manipulate Jaworski and use him to break into our world. We should consider ourselves very fortunate he was unable to decrypt it. He may not have been able to resist the siren call. As of this communication, we are unable to locate Angela Jaworski. That information and the above decryption has not been shared yet with our analyst. I leave how best to handle that to you. So this final document is actually after the breach of Echelon and how the strike team went in there and stopped it, saved the day, and all that great stuff. But the interesting things we learn about that is actually Eric, as we'll call him now, because it's easier to call him Eric than his what I think is a Russian name. It turns out he didn't die, and instead the director saw value in him and sent him to Lanley. Now, unfortunately, I can't go into much depth about Lanley as much as I would like, but regardless, what we also hear in this is that same message that Eric was unable to decrypt was actually decrypted by Requiem. And when we hear the decrypted message, it is quite interesting. Because what it sounds like at face value is Eric's wife, Angela, is actually trapped in the dark ether. And while she's trapped there, she was trying to reach out to her husband, Eric, in order to help her escape. Now, Requiem assumed that this was not his wife, and instead it was the Forsaken, which we all know that is something very likely to be something the Forsaken would do because, we know what the Forsaken did with Valentina, right? But what I really think gave it away in this message is when his wife, Angela, said that I will show you how to get her out of there, which, again, I don't know why she would know, and I think that's why Requiem and us should assume that this is the Forsaken and not just Requiem jumping to conclusions here. And I do think it is unfortunately the Forsaken, because not only is this something that the Forsaken, as I mentioned, has done in the past with Valentina, it's in fact something that he said he was going to do again in Mauer.
Closing this portal will not stop me. I convinced the girl I was her father with ease. I will find another conduit.
And this quote, among many other ones, is kind of pushing that idea that he's going to keep trying, because he said how easy it was for him to trick the girl. So it seems like this is something he's going to continue to do. But overall, that's the main thing that we learn about the Forsaken, that he is not giving up on trying to enter this world, and he's manipulating anybody he could possibly can from the Dark Aether to help him emerge from the Dark Aether to come to this world to take over it for himself, which is something that's probably going to play a major role inside DLC 4. But of course, there's some other things we want to go over, and of course, this is that Nazi military facility called here, which may be a little, changing history a little bit to fit the storyline, because in real life it was a university, but we'll go with what we know or what they're telling us in this story or the actual documents. And this military facility from the Nazis is very, very interesting, because this means that this facility was actually used by the Nazis to do something with the Dark Aether. Like, we don't really know what, but it's probably something to do with the Dark Aether. And who, of course, did the Nazis use to do this? Of course, it was the Endstation group. So this means the Endstation group was also involved here in Teufelsberg, or however you say this place's name. And that is incredibly interesting, because this expands what we thought Endstation did. Because initially our idea of Endstation was that they just did the stuff in Moscow, Poland, or as we know it as a map, in Die Maschine. Like, that was all we thought they did. But it turns out that was not the case, because in Malware we learned that they had a secret facility in Berlin, and now we learned that they also had another facility in Teufelsberg. So this Endstation group isn't as limited as we initially thought, and there's probably a lot more that we don't know about it, and this is something that's probably going to be directly involved with the future Vanguard Zombies storyline. This is probably what we're going to be going over, this whole Endstation and the full extent of what they truly did back during World War II. But that's not it that I want to mention about Vanguard, and it's kind of the big one that I mentioned at the start of this video, and that's a possible map location. And of course, I'm sure you guys all know what I'm going to say here, that one of the maps during Vanguard could be this Nazi military facility that we hear that was buried under all the rubble, of course, post World War II. And this fits perfect with a lot of Zombies maps in the past, right? How many maps have been at a 935 facility, except this time around at a Endstation facility that has been kind of overran by zombies or something like that? I mean, it would really fit in with the theme of how Treyarch likes to make their maps, and this would be a perfect location, and which is why I'm saying that I think there's a decent chance that this in the future could be a map in Vanguard. But regardless, that's about it for this video. I'd love to hear what you guys think of everything I had to say in this. What do you guys think the Forsaken is doing now? I mean, it seems like he's up to everything, manipulating anybody he possibly can. What do you think about how this may relate into Vanguard Zombies? And also, do you guys think that the Devil's Hill will be a map location in Vanguard Zombies? I'd love to hear all your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section. But that's about it for me. If you guys did enjoy the video and you found it interesting in any way, shape, or form, definitely do all the normal YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, bell, share, and all that great stuff. But I'm going to go. I'll catch you guys next stream video over that, maybe, and laters, guys.